Welcome to Tuesdays with Grace. Today we're going to work with Minky fabric. We're doing a baby blanket. You can do a lap quilt, you can do seasonal blankets, whatever you fancy. We have a trick for you today using press and seal. When we are cutting our Minky fabric, it goes everywhere. I'm sure all of you who have worked with Minky have experienced this. So we're just going to show you a little bit today on how to overcome that. And we're going to take our press and seal and we're going to apply it to our Minky prior to cutting it. Just make sure your Minky's straight underneath. And I'm going to cut this piece of Minky the same size as my other strip that I have previously cut. And with the cutter, it doesn't cut through the press and seal, but it will leave a line so that it'll show me where I want to cut with my scissors. So I am going to actually just make a line so I know where I want to cut. And you can see the line. And now I'm just going to cut it with my scissors. And as you notice, it holds all of the Minky where you want it, not on you. Okay, so I have a little bit more to cut, but I have a little bit more Minky that I have not put it on, so I'm going to grab another little piece. I'm going to finish cutting it the rest of the way. I don't know about you, but I have vacuumed up way too much Minky in my day, and this is so much better. It also helps when you get Minky on you. This is much easier to use to get it off you than your fabric lint rollers. You just use a big sheet of press and seal and you put it on you and it'll take a big section off at a time. So I am getting ready to sew sections together. We're going to do kind of the strip quilt. Some people use the stitch and flip method, but today we are going to just sew the strips together because we are going to quilt on our Cutie Breeze frame, which is new and much simpler to put together. And we'd like for you to introduce it to you. And we're going to use the little rebel on it as well. So I am going to use my bigger middle piece fabric, and I always start in the middle and work my way out. So I'm going to pin a piece of fabric to each end of my middle piece. And I'm going to use my blue fabric And anybody that's sewn with Minky knows it likes to slide. But one of the things I like about the Little Rebel is that it has this guide to help keep things in place. And so it helps on that end to keep it from going to the right on me. And I can control it going the other direction. So I only really have to control it going one direction instead of two directions. And now that I have this piece, I'm going to sew it together. Move this stuff out of our way. I'm actually going to change my guide. I like it at a 1/2 inch seam allowance with Minky. It gives me a little extra room, so if it does try to slide, I have more room to work with. Than I would if I was using a 1/4 inch. So there it is sewn to the one side. And we're going to take the other side and sew it to the top. And you notice that sometimes when I'm sewing, I will pull the fabric and adjust it. You want to do that quite often with Minky because Minky does slide quite a bit, especially when you're using like this fox fur versus the print Minky. There's different various kinds of Minky that you can use. There's print Minky. There's also Minky that has different designs on it, like hearts and dots and stars. There's also different kind of fox furs that is used for like Minky blankets. It's not generally in the same Minky section in some of the regular stores, but some of your other stores that specifically carry a lot of Minky fabric, they have all of the Minky there together, the fur and the prints and the solid colors. I like to use a variety when I'm doing like baby quilts. I choose some solids, some prints. I like to choose some different variances in like the thickness versus the thin. It just gives it a different feel as you are filling the blanket when it's complete, and it gives different sensory sensations with babies, and so it fulfills some different sensories like the design. It helps them with different colors, looking at different things, and then with the softness, some of that is more sensory, helps them to be able to sleep better a lot of times. So that's why I use a lot of different ones, because it helps fulfill different things. But your fox furs do like to slide a little more than what the prints do. So you do have to adjust them more often. And you don't want to take your pins out a little too early. I might have not used the pins that I needed down here on the bottom, so I'm going to pin that before I go on, so I have a little more stability down here. Okay, now you can see how that is sewn on the different ends, and then I continue to put different colors, variations on different sides. I have different size quilts that I like to do. This is a smaller one versus some of the other ones that I am going to be demonstrating today. This one I would do more for a newborn, whereas the others I would do for a little bit older baby. So we're going to start quilting on the Cutie Breeze. We're going to slip stitch and single stitch and bring up the threads before and then bring up the threads after each circle that we're going to sew. around each animal. And then we're going to cut our threads. And then we'll continue on to the next circle until we've finished all the circles on the quilt. After we've finished all the circles, then we will sew our binding. There are different ways we can do the binding. We can always cut the batting close to the edge of the quilt and use the backing that's extra that can fold over and stitch to the front of the quilt. That's one way to do the binding. The other way we can do the binding, like on this finished quilt that I've already done, this one was sewed on the Little Rebel as well on the Cutie Breeze. I chose a separate binding on this one because there's two different blue fabrics and the fabrics didn't quite match up with coloring that I wanted. And so I chose to do a white binding so that the colors wouldn't clash with each other. And you sew the binding to the back of the fabric and bring it over to the front. If you use like a fox fur on your binding, your thread from the front doesn't show through and you're able to use a thread that matches the backing. So you don't see your threads for your binding. And so then you get to sew your binding all the way around. And on the Little Rebel, it sews through all the thicknesses of the binding, even with the Minky. We're happy to have you tune in with Tuesdays with Grace, and we're grateful that you do each week. Thank you for tuning in today, and we will see you next week on another episode of Tuesdays with Grace.